Hello, Guardians, and welcome to episode 102 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. It's great to be back this week with the lads. We have so many reasons to be grinding, Onslaught, and many other aspects of the game coming very soon. Court, Impetus, how have you guys been for the past couple of weeks? Any shiny rolls to write home about?
Hello there, Saint, Impetus. I've got a few shiny rolls. I'm still collecting all those lovely golden ones. And yeah, for me, been doing plenty of onslaughting. I think all three of us have been. We'll get to you in a second here, Saint. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've been doing. And then outside of that, I released my Prismatic subclass overview infographic. If you haven't already seen that, you can find that over on my socials, on the DMB Discord server, or over on my Coffee. And I do want to thank everyone who shared. And of course, As the Cross for the big shout out on his Prismatic subclass video as well. So for me, been fairly busy in terms of in-game, but also out of the game, but still related to Destiny. So thank you very much, everyone. Impetus, how have you been?
Yeah, much the same as yourself, although no big infographics or fun pairings with any big content creators. Just playing Onslaught. Still chasing a few things. Actually, I've been playing a lot of Onslaught with you, Court, and our editor, Autodidactus. Been having some fun gaming sessions with him. I have not gotten as many shinies, unfortunately, but that's okay. I've been getting rolls, though, that I've been stowing away for a later date, but I am still chasing my desired mountaintop roll, which you'll hear about probably next week, actually, when we do get around to covering the second set of Onslaught weapons. So still a little bit more. I'll probably get back into that activity either tomorrow night or tonight, depending on if I have the time. But yeah, it feels good to be chasing good weapons. Saint, how about yourself? What have you been up to this past week?
I spent a good chunk of this past week up in Chicago. It was my wife's birthday as well as my own birthday. So yeah, we had a lot of fun up there. Just going all around the city, different neighborhoods, every kind of food that you can possibly imagine. It's a great thing about being in a big city like Chicago is that you eat so much food, but you're also walking so much that by the time you finish walking, you're like, I could eat another sandwich right about now. I wouldn't mind that. Highlights, of going to like Second City, which I had never been to before. Even when I lived there, I don't know why I never stopped by. But yeah, that was hilarious as advertised. Lived up to the name. A lot of good pizza, a lot of good drinks, all that stuff. So really sweet time on vacation up there, but have not been playing as much Onslaught as I would like because of it. I've done a few runs, probably 4 or 5 50 wave runs. I've only made it to in the 40s on the legend mode. Still going to try to refine the loadout and go in for another clear of that probably tonight and tomorrow. But yeah, shout out everybody, all the Massive Breakdowns friends for the runs and all that stuff. It is, man, it's so fun. I know I'm only on like wave, main clear number 6 of playing Onslaught, but damn am I enjoying what I am playing. It is a really good activity. It's just easy to engage with.
I think Court and I are probably coming around to the other side of that just because we've had to play on legend difficulty a little bit longer. There are certainly some enemies that take the fun away, especially when they teleport behind you or power slam you into the ground or, yeah. It's a good time, though. It's a good time, but man, the Sky Bombers suck so much.
For me, it was a stomping brig that just sent me off the map. That
the
didn't
big one,
feel great, yeah. And then Fallen Captain that I straight up just whiffed 2 rockets on because he would teleport, and I would try to like catch him right after the teleport and hit him with the overload rocket, and he just teleport again. And then teleported again right as soon as I was like, okay, maybe he just teleported. He's probably going to be stationary for just a second. I can like land this rocket. And he's like, yeah, you thought. But
one of our runs was, we were trying to do the 50 run. And at the time of recording, Impetus and we haven't done that yet just because we've been farming anyway. But Was it the one that we had Tormentor at like round 3, and then we thought, okay, that's it. We won't have the Tormentor ever again. But nope, we got one. Was it 49 or 43? One of the two, and that destroyed us.
That one hurt a lot more
because I was the assumption you could only get it once during your 50, but that's not the case. So that was fun. No, it's been a lot of fun. Just trying to perfect the builds, the strats. I'm sure we'll probably share some builds in the future as well when it comes to actually like efficiently farming it. They've got a lot of changes coming up as well. We haven't really talked about it in this episode, but they do plan to up the rewards for doing a legend run. So that looks very good, very fast turnaround in terms of receiving feedback from the community and then outputting it, even though this event's only up until, or most of it's going away at the end of, or I should say at the start of June, even though the actual playlist of Onslaught is staying, much of it will be kind of dispersing as we head into the big flashy new thing. So yeah, we're getting that by the time this episode will come out. That there'll be some new changes. So very promising, very cool.
Well, who do we have to thank, Court?
Yes, so we have some new patrons as of this episode. So we would like to thank Nuclear Shark, The Binder, Shadow 2400, and Subsistence Sasquatch. And of course, our lovely sponsors as well, Askian Monk, I Am K Rose, and This Moment. You can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the DMB Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and much more in the PvE sandbox for all kinds of players. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether it's downloading and listening to our episodes, discussing it on social media, and of course our Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit destinymassivebreakdowns.com and click the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channels in Discord, behind-the-scenes content like episode previews, and input on the future of the show. Impetus, what are we talking about this time?
We've got a wonderful announcement to make. That is the PvE 100th episode giveaway winner. We have that person pulled, as well as a weapons breakdown, the Brave Weapons Part 1 specifically. So that's Hung Jury SR4, Elsie's Rifle, the Recluse, Succession, Edge Transit, and Falling Guillotine. That's what we're talking about in today's episode. So without further ado, let's talk about that very lucky patron. As previously announced, during our special 100th episode, we would hold a giveaway for all of our amazing patrons for a beautiful art piece of the Witherhoard weapon made by our dear friend Irresolute. We have pulled that name, and the winner is MBlow78. Congratulations. We will be in touch very soon on your wonderful art piece. All right. Court, what are we talking about specifically with the Brave Weapons, the first half?
Yeah, so this is our kind of part 1. We're going to be covering 6 of the 12 this week, and then in a future episode, once all the other 6 are out, available to play, to get all those shiny versions, we'll talk about them. So this week is going to be Hung Jury. We've got Elsie's Rifle, the Recluse, Succession, Edge Transit, and Falling Guillotine. And then the other half, which are Midnight Coup, Luna's Howl, Blast Furnace, The Mountaintop, Forbearance, and Hammerhead. They'll be in a future episode. Just as a reminder, right off the top here, all of these weapons and their shiny variants with double perks can be enhanced in the final shape, so we are aware of that. Imp and I, we talked about the Iron Banner, the playlist weapons, Iron Banner, Nightfall, and Trials, and how those also can be enhanced in the final shape. It's the same here with all 12 of these weapons, including double perk versions. All right, so origin traits. Now, this is the only origin trait all of these weapons can roll. We've seen a few of these before, as we'll talk about them as they come, but there's only one origin trait, and that is the Indomitability, and that is if you're using a light subclass, Arc, Solar, Void, weapon kills grant you 5% great energy, and if you're using a dark subclass, Stasis or Strand, weapon kills give you 5% melee energy. quite important now that we know some more information about prismatic, because we have a specific facet in that sandbox, which is the inverse, where if you're using a dark weapons, dark kind of stuff, it gives you grenade energy, and then light things give you melee energy. So we'll see more of that in the future with the prismatic subclass. All right, Impetus, you wanted to cover Hung Jury, or much like, what did I say before? Much like Tanix keeps returning and coming back. Somehow it returned.
We just can't shake this poor gun. SR4, I think this is the 4th version of it too, so this is hopefully the final time we'll have to deal with Hung Jury. But yes, the kinetic precision scout rifle, originally from Destiny 1, now probably most well known for the 3 different versions of it that exist in D2, is coming back to us. As a precision frame, it does have that intrinsic passive of its frame where it is a minus 20% recoil yaw. That means it's a reduced horizontal recoil. Basically, precision frames should feel quite nice to shoot. Shouldn't be bouncing all over the place when you're firing at 180 RPM. This thing is a stat and now perk monster. We've said this before many times because we've covered the Hung Jury before. Stats haven't changed since the last time. So just as a reminder, we're going to compare Hung Jury to Nameless Midnight from the Strike playlist and Tears of Contrition all the way back from Season of the Haunted, just to give you an idea of how much of a stat monster this is. On the range side of things, we've got a 49 range versus 40 versus 47 for Nameless Midnight and Tears of Contrition. Stability is a 55 versus 38 versus 49. Handling is 50 versus 41 versus 46. Reload is a 46 versus a 44 versus a 39. And then recoil direction is the only one where Hung Jury is not on top. It's the middle option here. It has 75 recoil direction to Nameless Midnight's 79 to Tears of Contrition's 70. So almost entirely dominant, but recoil direction, again, on a precision frame scout rifle, not the end of the world if it's only 4 points behind our strike option here. And of course, the perk pool on this is the best it's ever been, but it is still an oversaturated scout rifle nevertheless. So as a reminder of all of our different appearance versions here, let's go over the last appearances of this. So Season 19, the Seraph version of that, is what we'll be comparing to, and its base version is still acquirable from the Vanguard vendor as legacy loot focusing. It did debut with an Adept version. That Adept version is no longer acquirable. The Vanguard version does roll with the origin traits Stunning Recovery, Vanguard's Vindication, and Amalon Fluid Dynamics. So 3 origin traits versus this Brave version, which just has the 1 Indomitability. Of course, the Brave version does not get the other 3 as well. We did get an extra perk in columns 3 and 4 on the Brave version, but there were also some perk updates compared to this Vanguard version here. So if we're thinking about it as kind of an upgrade of the Vanguard version, in column 3, the Offhand Strike, Subsistence, and Surplus traits were removed, and then in column 3 they were added in Enlightened Action, Kinetic Tremors, which appeared originally in column 4 or does appear in column 4 on the Vanguard version. Loose Change, and then Rewind Rounds. Column 4 saw Adagio, Frenzy, Gutshot Straight, and Kinetic Tremors removed, and then added in on the Brave version Cascade Point, Desperate Measures, Explosive Payload, Precision Instrument, and One for All. So it's a larger perk pool, and it's a much stronger perk pool, especially on the PvE side of things. With a precision frame, when it comes to our barrels and magazines, you pretty much have freedom to go for any stat except for range. You do not need to touch the range stat on any scout rifles ever. We are looking at when you are ADSing 75 meters of range, that will cover pretty much every single distance range band in any PvE activity that you need to worry about. So don't worry about that. I would personally lean fluted barrel. Always nice to have a snappier feeling, slightly more stable scout rifle there with a bump to the handling and stability. If you wanted to lean more to stability, I guess, polygonal would be fine here. Recoil direction 75. Again, it's going to feel quite nice here. This gun doesn't fire fast enough really to get out of control. I can understand though if you start getting flinched while you're shooting it, maybe you would want to spec more into stability, but I definitely don't think you need to touch the recoil stat at all here. Moving over to our magazines, I always personally lean for tactical mag here, just more bullets in the chamber while I'm firing down range, while I'm dealing with snipers. That can be quite nice here. If you want to go to appended mag, that is totally fine as well here. Flared mag will again give a big boost to reload speed. That works as well, especially if you might want to lean on double damage perks for this version of the weapon where you won't have access to a reload perk. That wouldn't be a bad idea at all. But yeah, I think tac mag would be my top choice. Flared mag will be second. Columns 3 and 4. I mean, there are just a lot of combos that are just straight up good rolls. You know, whatever you want to call your god roll is kind of a hard thing to break down here, especially on these weapons. I mean, rewind rounds is pretty much always going to be an excellent option in column 3. Rapid hit, same story. Enlightened action can be quite nice as well. Shoot to loot, kinetic tremors are the ones that I'm kind of looking at. I am not personally sold on loose change. I understand some people are quite into it, and with certain debuff builds, it can be quite nice, but I would much rather just have, especially on this weapon, rapid hit or rewind rounds, personally, for the kind of buffs that loose change applies. For me, though, kinetic tremors showing up in column 3 is kind of the big deal. That's very unique, very special, and there's a lot of excellent damage perks that can work with or help to proc. Actually, sorry, take that back. They cannot help to proc kinetic tremors because we have recently learned that, but there are things that can kind of be stacked on top of kinetic tremors in column 4 that are wonderful, such as explosive payload, desperate measures, firefly. I did get a kinetic tremors firefly roll of Hung Jury. I think that's probably the one that I'll hold on to so far. I can't really imagine any other combo impressing me more than that, but there are definitely other roles that could be of use to you. Again, we love One for All, great perk. Firefly is a great perk. That does give you a little bit of a reload speed bonus. Desperate Measures is turning out to be a very, very solid option in both PvE and PvP. Weapon Final Blows grant you that 10% increased damage for 7 seconds. That is actually 1 stack, and then if you get a grenade or melee kill, even an uncharged melee kill, you get a 20% increased damage buff for 7 seconds. That's the second stack. If you score a second grenade or melee kill, that will increase it to a 30% damage buff, and that is the third and final stack. Most importantly, though, Desperate Measures can stack while you are stowed. So it is a very flexible and a very scalable, powerful damage perk with weapon kills refreshing that buff duration. So you can pair that with kinetic tremors as well for dealing that sustained weapon damage to keep the perk up and running after you get a grenade or a melee kill. One thing to note, though, with the scout rifle, you're probably using this at range, so it may be a bit hard to get the melee and the grenade kill if you are trying to stay within the typical range band of a scout rifle, but you can make it work, with a grenade at least, or like a throwing knife or something like that if you want to go for those trick shots, but just something to be aware of there. But for me, I think the role that I have is the one that I'm most interested in. Do you guys have any specific combinations that you're looking at for Hung Jury? Are you just kind of passing by Hung Jury because you maybe got a good roll of the Vanguard version of Hung Jury and you're not really caring for what this one has to offer?
There was a good roll of the Vanguard version.
All right, fair enough. Say you got any rolls that you're looking at?
Shoot to loot kinetic tremors. People, hold up. Basically I already have that version, and so that's in my vault. And then I have one that has Firefly shoot to loot as well, which is, I don't know, just fun. It's not super effective, but it is fun to use. So since I have those guys, yeah, I'm pretty much only interested in a few of the third column kinetic tremor rolls, like you pointed out. I do like the idea of Desperate Measures being able to proc off of charged melees and uncharged melees because, I mean, I play a lot of Solar Titan, as you guys know, and hitting those uncharged melees while you have Roaring Flames up is pretty strong, and Throwing Hammer is there, Consecration is there, so I do really like that, and I think it surprised me that you could proc it with even what are considered uncharged melees. But I don't know if that's the strongest option on a scout rifle. I don't know how often I'm going to be up in the mix, like punching a ton and then turning and using my scout. It definitely can happen. So I'd say kinetic tremors in the third, and then maybe, Desperate Measures or One for All in the final column. Now, kinetic tremors, I believe, inherits some damage traits from the other damage perks, but obviously something like explosive payload, I don't really think that's going to work. And then same for like precision instrument, just because of the nature of that trait, I don't really think that's going to work. I like Firefly and Kinetic Tremors because it's kind of that balance of, Firefly's got the low level, like it's got the ad clear, and then Kinetic Tremors has got the, you want to do a little bit more damage when you're like trying to stun a champ or something like that. So that's, probably if I really had to keep only a single one in my vault, that'd probably be it.
Yeah, so I don't have any additional roles. You guys have already covered them, but I would like just to point out real quick about Kinetic Tremors. So I think everyone was asking how would this synergize with explosive payload. It doesn't, as Impetus mentioned a few moments ago. Other perks that are like you'd maybe think would kind of stack up with Kinetic Tremors, not in a damage way, but just to help it like proc faster. It's not the case, but we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to Midnight Coup, because this has a kind of similar kind of combination when we get to that. But I'm just looking at Mossy's little kind of snippet that he put up on his socials a few days ago. Again, this is just specifically related to the hand cannon for Midnight Coup and how that does really good damage. Kinetic Tremors does really good damage for the hand cannon. Scouts aren't that far behind. It just has a kind of blanket coverage across all the combatants. So Kinetic Tremors in the third column. This is one of two weapons that get it. The other one we'll talk about in the future as well, and that's Blast Furnace. Pulse Rifles, maybe not the best thing to have Kinetic Tremors, just being able to, you can land those shots, but I think Scout Rifles really suits them. And again, it's in the kind of middling, it kind of almost gets to the upper tier when it comes to how the damage kind of shows up for Kinetic Tremors on a Scout Rifle. So seeing that in column 3 and then pairing that with a damage perk like One for All, which should work, should buff the damage from that pulsing of Kinetic Tremors. That's all I've got to add here. I don't want to poo-poo too much on Hung Jury, as we've already seen it before, but just wanted to add that added context for Kinetic Tremors.
Yeah, I still think Kinetic Tremors is probably the one required perk I'd take on it, just because it shows up in column 3. Firefly, of course, a lot of people forget this, has a reload speed bonus attached to it. It is when you do get that precision kill and the target explodes, dealing the solar damage. You also, at that very same time, get 50 reload speed on the weapon for 6 seconds. So, again, a little bit overkill on Hung Jury, because Hung Jury is sitting at 46, so that takes it all the way up to 100, and you can probably reload it just fine at that base reload speed. But on other weapons with Firefly, that can be a make or break stat bump right there. So with Kinetic Tremors, you're able to deal sustained damage. If you can land that precision shot and also get the solar explosion off, now you've got a very fast reloading Scout Rifle as well. So everything comes together and really makes the weapon feel fun to shoot, because you're dealing explosions while you're trying to kill the enemy, and then on the enemy's death, and then you're also getting a lightning fast reload. All right, Saint, you want to talk about Elsie's rifle?
I really do, and I really did not think that I would. So this is probably the most surprising weapon. I definitely for myself, I think that we're all pretty surprised by this. When you're kind of just going through the initial list, Elsie's rifle was a big surprise and kind of that's cool. It's really nostalgic, right? It's one of the oldest Destiny weapons. It's cool to see him bring it back, but Void Pulse rifle, nothing too crazy. It turns out it is something too crazy though. When we get into these stats here, comparison here, we've got Elsie's rifle versus Phylotactic Spiral and the Messenger from Neomuna and Trials, respectively. On the range, we've got 60 range, which is actually bested by 66 on the Messenger, but every other stat, stability is 55. That is 10 above Phylotactic and 1 above Messenger. The handling is 42 at base, which is 11 points above the Messenger. The reload is 60, which is 22 points above the Messenger. And then finally, recoil direction is 73 versus 80 and 60 for Phylotactic Spiral and the Messenger. So wouldn't really worry too much about that because when we consider the bonus of the frame, this is a void high impact scout rifle, right? Or pulse rifle, pardon me. And that's shooting at 340 RPM, and that frame bonus while you're aimed down sights and you're moving at or below 2.8 meters per second, you're going to get that negative 20% accuracy cone size and negative 17% accuracy cone growth. So it's going to help a pretty significant amount there. And thrown on something like Arrowhead Break, I'll just start off there and say probably a pretty good option because you can get that handling stat up a little bit and get that recoil direction all the way up to 100, which is not necessary, but feels nice. I think that even just somewhere in the 80s, even just putting like a plus 10 on there is going to feel just fine from like a chamber compensator or something like that. But yeah, I'm going Arrowhead Break. And then the thing that I'm most interested in this weapon for in PvE, basically two scenarios. Number one is when I want to cosplay as Court and I put on my Gerfalcon's hauberk and go to work. We've got Repulsor Brace and Frenzy here. And then we also have Under Over in the third column, which is something that I have come to value much more in recent times because we also have Armor Piercing rounds in our rounds options here. So combining something like Armor Piercing rounds plus Under Over plus Frenzy plus if you have volatile rounds, you can be anti-barrier, and Gerfalcon's enables that really easily. So now we have a weapon that is just going to absolutely shred. For reference, Armor Piercing rounds are giving you like 5% extra damage against shields, and Under Over is giving you 50% extra damage against barriers specifically. So 55% extra damage against barriers. Plus, if you've got Frenzy up, that's an extra 15% damage. Moral of the story is a very good utility anti-barrier weapon. And okay, outside of that, when you're using it with something like Gerfalcon's IMO. Court, am I cooking here, or am I just like way off with this as the actual hunter here?
If you want to cosplay as that, then yeah, absolutely go for that. Repulsor Brace and Destabilizing rounds is there, but I've said that before with another Void weapon in recent past, it's a bit of a trap. Not in a bad way, it's just a bit of overlap when your weapon already through Gerfalcon's already gives you volatile rounds, so you don't need more volatility unless you really want to see the world burn with purple void energy. No, I don't have much else to mention here. I'm mostly chasing this for kind of PvP purposes because there's a lot of PvP perks in here. Repulsor Brace in the third column is always great to see. It doesn't take up a damage slot when you've got Desperate Measures. You've got Frenzy there. Frenzy, just really workhorse of a weapon perk, and I think that's probably something that I would go for. If I think I've got plenty of weapons that have the whole Gerfalcon synergy, and we'll talk about one coming up next as well. But very great gun. I want to get some really good perks for PvP, and it just looks amazing. I love that No Time to Explain / Stranger's Rifle kind of look. Just looks really cool, especially when you get that gold foil kind of shader or ornament. Impetus, you got any perks here that you're chasing?
Mostly just Repulsor Brace Frenzy and Repulsor Brace Desperate Measures. I'd like to have a mid-range weapon with Repulsor Brace that also has a decent damage perk, is kind of the thought process there.
Yeah, I hear that. It's shockingly good for considering something that we all kind of just thought, oh, yeah, that's cool, I guess. That's really nostalgic. That'll be fun. The sound, even just hearing the sound of this thing is nostalgic. But yeah, all of a sudden it's all over the place in the Crucible with Zen Moment in the third column and a litany of good traits to pick from in the fourth. So,
of which can all be enhanced. In a few weeks' time.
Great reminder.
Boy, that final shape PvP meta is gonna be a juicy one.
Gonna pop my prismatic and throw out that massive grenade and pull out my Elsie's rifle with Zen Moment Headseeker. both enhanced, and maybe another perk in each column as well. I think, yeah, so to your point there, Saint, I think everyone was kind of like, okay, this is like the little kind of very nostalgic weapon that was coming back. And I thought that initially, because I was after Blast Furnace. Blast Furnace we'll talk about in the future, but that's a different frame. It's a 4 burst. This is just a 3. But yeah, very surprising to see this has kind of been a bit... folks did kind of ignore as it was coming out. And nope, definitely get those PvP and PvE roles. I think this is more suited for the PvP sandbox, but if you are looking, as I mentioned there, about kind of a mid-range option for Repulsor Brace shenanigans, then this is your go-to. All right, next up, Recluse, the return of the weapon that was in both sandboxes for many months, way back, many years ago. It's finally returned. Is our Void lightweight SMG. That's 900 RPM, and lightweights, of course, have that passive bonus of plus 20 mobility and 6.25% forward movement speed bonus. So, is it fair to compare this with other SMGs? Well, let's have a look. So let's pair it with Out of Bounds, which is our Arc PvP option from a few seasons ago, and its direct competitor, perhaps the one that took its throne and now is getting its throne taken back, and that's Funnel Web. That is our Void Viced World Drop from Witch Queen days. So let's have a look. Range 40 with Recluse, 39 Funnel Web, 32, Stability 47, 44 versus 43. Handling actually goes to the Funnel Web, it's 70, Recluse is 63, and Out of Bounds has 67. Reload, we've got 28 versus 31 versus 28, so Funnel Web just slight edge here. But Recluse has a perfect recoil direction. Not that necessarily matters when we do have deterministic recoil in a lot of these weapons now, versus 96 versus 95. So obviously, this is coming from the static roll that we had that was polygonal rifling, ricochet rounds, feeding frenzy, master of arms, and I had that range masterwork. We have seen a range increase from 34 to 40, and an AE increase from 12 to 19. And this is all with all the perks not selected, including the original one. So it might look a little bit different with the original perks selected versus this at base, but that's the stat increases. So let's have a look. So this has been kind of a lightweight frame. You may want to go into stability. Not that it really matters when your recoil direction is up high, but if you are on a controller, I kind of defer this to Saint, our resident controller user. You may want to go down that path just to really keep up the stability. There are some really good options here that do buff your stability, including polygonal rifling. That's the original one. You've got small bore, just a slight edge to your range and as well, plus 7 to each. You've got chambered compensator that does reduce your handling. There's no benefit to the RD because it's already at 100. And then you've got something like arrowhead break, which if you just want to pivot into handling, but it's already got very high handling. And just remember that handling does improve your aim down speed as well as you're kind of swapping in and swapping out of. In terms of your magazine's perks, pretty much, with this being SMG, there isn't like a go-to. If you want something that really pivots into your knocking back targets that are kind of your quite smaller type targets, like your rank and files, tier 1 to 2 miners, high cal rounds. You've got ricochet rounds, which again was the original one. That's plus 5 range and stability. And then you've got armor piercing for that plus 5. But I think really when it comes to the important perks, it's your column 3 and 4, and there's a lot to choose from. And again, much like Elsie's rifle, you have Repulsor Brace in the 3rd column, and then you've got Destabilizing Rounds in the 4th. Again, if you're a Gerfalcon's Void Hunter, you don't need Destabilizing Rounds. That means you can pivot into using Frenzy. You've got Surrounded there. This is a good choice. And again, once you can enhance these perks, Surrounded is a very good choice. When you get that enhanced, it goes up to around about a 42% damage increase. And of course, we've got Desperate Measures as well as a kind of pseudo Golden Tricorn perk. So a lot of great damage options. Master of Arms in the fourth column, it's received quite a lot of nerfs since its original version. I personally don't value it, especially when you have something like Frenzy, which is the same damage increase. It's got the whole bonuses to your handling and reload speeds. Master of Arms doesn't have that. It's just your kind of, you could call it a workhorse perk. I'm not that convinced with Master of Arms. But anyway, as in terms of the full perk selection here, in column 3, Feeding Frenzy, Enlightened Action, Subsistence, Threat Detector, Repulsor Brace, Hipfire Grip, and Dynamic Sway Reduction. Again, that's potentially a perk option for controller players if they want to really keep it nice and steady. And then in column 4, we've got Master of Arms, Target Lock, Frenzy, Destabilizing, Surrounded, Tap the Trigger, and Desperate Measures. So for me personally, probably going to go for something like Repulsor Brace, Frenzy, just as a close range option to tie up with our mid-range option with Elsie's rifle. Feeding Frenzy is here. Probably don't need to pair that with Frenzy because you're getting a lot of bonuses with Feeding Frenzy with the reload. So I would maybe go for something like Surrounded. I would like to get a Surrounded roll just so I can enhance that for in the future with the enhancement that's coming then. Saint, what I've been talking about controller players on your behalf, but have I missed anything in terms of keeping this nice and steady for our controller players?
No, they're the first thing I'll say. I mean, kind of my mindset with coming at this is okay. I got Funnel Web. I've got thousands and thousands of kills with Funnel Web. What can Recluse do that Funnel Web can't? Right? I know I'm real familiar with that. I would definitely agree that Master of Arms, 15%. It's 7 seconds. That's really nice. 15% is not really enough. I really would love to see that bumped up, changed in some way, or just increased to like 20% or something like that. It's a unique trait for this weapon. I feel like it should be just a little bit stronger. So that was kind of disappointing. I've got a Hipfire Grip Tap the Trigger roll, which I know sounds really goofy, but as somebody that plays Peacekeepers, that's really fun because you can just hit way too accurately from the hip, and that's always a good time in PvP. But thinking about, like really what can this thing do that Funny Web cannot? And I would say, there's a couple things I look at. Threat Detector, immediately pops up. I'm just way more interested in that over something like Subsistence, especially on Funnel Web that has Vice Stinger on it. And Funnel, the Threat Detector does also give that plus 40 stability, right? Not only the reload speed, up into like 80 something, but also a big chunk of stability there, just helping you land more crits. I'm also pretty fond of Enlightened Action in that column. On an SMG, and I don't think we've seen that before on an SMG. I don't know if that's the very first time. I believe that's very rare on an SMG. And if I'm going something like Threat Detector, you've got Surrounded right there, which is incredibly strong, or Enlightened Action Surrounded, maybe a Repulsor Brace, Desperate Measures, depending on kind of what build I'm on there. But I think probably Threat Detector Surrounded and maybe like an Enlightened Action, Desperate Measures, or Repulsor Brace and Frenzy. Those are all pretty strong combos, with Threat Detector Surrounded being my absolute go-to, because I find that there are so many situations in which you'll have Surrounded up, and like Court said, that is a ridiculously high 40+% damage buff when it is enhanced. 42.5 enhanced?
Something like that. I don't have the numbers at me, but it's one of the rare perks that increases when you enhance it. instead of just giving you like a flat +5 stability or something like that, it's like a 5% multiplicative bonus to the already 35% damage bonus. So yeah, it goes up to about 40, 42, 43, which is insane.
Yeah.
For a weapon like that, it's you're naturally going to be surrounded by enemies, and the amount of activities that have been giving us a lot of ad dense places, then yeah, you're going to proc that. Just to say that in Lightning Action, we've seen on Parabellum, Unending Tempest, and Cold Front in column 3.
Cold Front. I didn't even. Parabellum, I knew. I had one of those. Cold Front. I don't know. That Cold Front flew under my radar a little bit.
Yeah, you're not the only one. It's okay.
Yeah, we don't have to dwell on that though. Imtis, what are you thinking? How are you feeling about Recluse?
I'm feeling great. I haven't got the roll that I want on it, which just real par for the course here. I have a shiny roll of this that has the original Feeding Frenzy Master of Arms, but then also Hipfire Grip and Surrounded. And
Oof.
I know I need to delete it. Like it's not it, but I haven't gotten there yet. Just give me a few more days and it'll be gone. I promise. I am approaching this gun on a serious note. Same mentality as Elsie's rifle. I'd like to get a repulsor brace up close option. I will probably lean Surrounded, but I honestly, if I got Frenzy, I'd be fine. If I got Desperate Measures, I'd take it too. I'm not, again, we don't really have time to be picky, so that's kind of where I'm at right now with that. Is it's just repulsor brace, and then one of the good damage perks in column 4. I have an Unforgiven with Demo Frenzy, so Void SMGs are already, it's a pretty high bar to impress me, just because that gun has served me so well. I do also have the Subsistence Frenzy Funnel Web, so I'm set on a lot of things, but, those weapons, I have not gotten an Unforgiven with Repulsor Brace, so that means there is a spot for Recluse in my arsenal.
I really, now that when you started talking about that, I really don't have a ton of close range options. I used to have a few or two at 59, and that sat in my vault for about a year and a half, and then I deleted it because I've got to get over it. Never got the Repulsor Brace Rosarago, which I think is the only thing that would come close. But yes, I'm pretty keen on that for the same reason, just because, like you said, right now I think like Word of Crota is like my close range Repulsor Brace option, which that's fine, but would definitely take that repulsor brace, frenzy like you're talking about here.
Yeah, so I was going to mention the title, which is our other SMG, which has repulsor brace in the third column, and also has surrounded. The most recent one has both of them. But it's really, if you like aggressive frames, some of them can be pretty good. Like Akelos, the Arc SMG. I do really dig, but the title can be a bit like, am I feeling this? Am I not? With it being an aggressive frame, it's a lot slower. It does hit harder, but a lot of the time, my brain is more pilled towards fast-firing, lightweight weapons, and this is one of them, being a lightweight frame, 900 RPM. I know the feeling of Recluse, because I was definitely one of them that used it in both sandboxes many years ago. But I think that's a very good choice to kind of focus on. Not saying title's bad or anything like that. I just sometimes not in the mood to use an aggressive frame, whereas I'm always in the mood to use a lightweight frame, and repulsor brace in the third column, and frenzy or desperate measures or surrounded. I would like to get some of those rolls because they aren't dropping for me.
Yeah, I mean, with Prismatic, but also with the new Void stuff coming to Titan in the final shape, I really am locking down my repulsor brace options for definitely close range and middle range. Long range is kind of whatever. But Elsie's rifle and Recluse are kind of the top of my list for just making sure that I have those options. I do have the Word of Crota with repulsor brace and frenzy, so I'm not out of luck entirely, but it's always good to have stuff. We don't know what the champion mods are yet for the time period of the final shape. So, always good to have options. All right. I guess I will be talking about, wow, I really got the great picks here. Boy, the Succession. what a sniper rifle, right? I mean, when I think of weapons that I definitely wanted to see in the Brave arsenal, the Succession just immediately did not come to mind for me. This is an excellent kinetic sniper rifle, aggressive frame, firing at 72 RPM from our Deepstone Crypt dungeon from the Beyond Light expansion. We'll do stat comparison first here. So I'm going to be comparing Succession with Volta Bracket, which is the strand aggressive from the Neomuna destination and is craftable. Succession is also craftable, the version from Deepstone Crypt, the Brave version not. And then we're also going to compare those two with Bite of the Fox, which is the kinetic comparison from Iron Banner. I think it might not be available from Iron Banner after the end of this season, if I'm recalling, but I might have that schedule wrong. So anyways, it'll be Succession versus Volta Bracket versus Bite of the Fox for our stat comparison. On the range here, we've got Succession at the top of 76 versus 72 versus 70. Stability also on top, a 23 versus a 23 versus a 20. Handling, shocker, it's on top, 30 versus 24 versus 25. Reload speed, I'll say it again, it's on top, 35 versus 28 versus 25. Recoil direction, you guessed it, it's on top, 80 versus 76 versus 68. And then here we'll get into the total ammo capacities, just so you kind of understand that, because that is an important statistic to know when it comes to all sniper rifle frames, but especially for our aggressives here. So total ammo capacity at base here versus mag perks and mods, they may variably or increase that number. So we'll just kind of do a base and then we'll stack on some reserve mods here. At base, we have 18 versus 16 versus 17. I won't say it again. And then with reserve mods at 1, 2, and 3, I will say it again. I lied. Succession's on top here. We've got 21 versus 18 versus 19 at 1 reserve mod. Going up to 2, it's 23 versus 21 versus 22. And then 3 reserve mods, 24 versus 22 versus 23. So Succession is on top. It's not, I guess, a surprise why they would want to bring this sniper rifle of all of our kinetic sniper rifles into the Brave arsenal, but it is very much already doing fine. The version that you can still go get from the Deepstone Crypt here. So it's a very high bar. Let's see if the Brave version does bring anything new to the table. Yes, you can still acquire the Deepstone Crypt version, and you can still craft that and enhance its perks. And that version does roll with the Bray Inheritance origin trait. So this is a 1 in origin trait versus another 1 origin trait roll on not the hung jury case where you had 3 versus 1 here. So it's indomitability versus Bray Inheritance. You are getting energy gains from both of them, so they are somewhat related here. If we look at our columns 3 and 4 in terms of what are the differences between the perks here, in the Brave version, column 3 does not have shot swap, but it does have Discord. And in column 4, Brave version of Succession does not have Osmosis, but it does have Redirection. So very, very slight upgrades here. When we do actually look at the weapon and start filling it out with what we would want to see here, again, aggressive frames are very low on stability, handling, and reload speed. So when it comes to column 3 and 4, that's what I'm targeting. I would take a fluted barrel. I would probably, I would take polygonal here. Again, much like scout rifles, but especially so with sniper rifles, don't ever touch that range stat for PvE. You don't need to. It will serve you just fine at base. So I would touch fluted, I would touch polygonal, and then I'd probably go, oh gosh, where's that image? I should have pulled the image up since I knew I was doing the sniper rifle for how the mags affect the number of rounds in the magazine here. I believe on aggressive frames, does TAC mag actually boost the number up?
Yes, so it's 3 at base, then TAC mag's 4, backup mag or extended mag is 4, TAC mag plus backup mag is 4, and extended mag plus backup mag is 5.
There you have it. Now, we do not recommend backup mag. In fact, we viciously mock anyone who puts backup mag on any of their weapons. So you don't need to worry about that 5 in the mag. Again, tactical mag or extended mag would be acceptable options here. Alloy mag, faster reloads is nice, but you're sitting at 3 in your magazine. That's just a little bit too low for you to really do a lot of solid damage, unless you're trying to go for something like a hyper burst option. But even then, I still think I'd like to have 4 shots available in case I miss and I'm not down to just 2 if I had the base count there. So that really narrows down column 2 for me. It's tac mag or extended mag, with tac mag kind of being the best there because I'm also getting some nice stat bumps as well. All right, moving on to column 3 and 4. Column 3, I'll be honest, there's been a lot of talk of Discord and all the flexibility, the freedom that Discord allows you to have by regenerating ammo, and that is certainly nice, but keep in mind that both the Raid version and the Brave version of Succession do also roll with Reconstruction, which is quite possibly the best reload perk in the game. It reloads the gun for you. It is wonderful because it also gives you the option to overflow the magazine, which on a very small mag weapon like Succession is particularly valuable. So yes, you are limited to how much special ammo you can pick up and put into Succession for Reconstruction to be available, whereas Discord does allow you to generate ammo out of thin air for a time being. But I think in most situations, the lack of thought and preparation that I have to put into Reconstruction will win out over the thought and work that I have to put into Discord for that small window where I can fire this gun without having to worry about losing ammo because I'm just printing bullets once I get a kill. That is tough, right? Discord relying on those final blows, I think, is kind of the thing for me that makes Reconstruction more appealing. I will also point out we have Demolitionist and we have Lead from Gold in column 3. Lead from Gold can certainly be a better option in, say, something like a Nightfall for saving ammo as you're going through an activity. I personally am still going to say Reconstruction takes the edge. Demolitionist, with Indomitability paired, you are certainly going to be getting some great grenade gains back. But on a weapon that I really only use for very specific situations when I need to burst down a high health target, I don't think the benefit of Demolitionist is quite as potent as on another special weapon type like a waveframe grenade launcher or even just a regular lightweight grenade launcher where I could be getting multi-kills and getting a lot of grenade ability energy back. That is the more viable situation to me, but yes, Demolitionist is also there and I feel like I should point it out. So again, there's some stuff here in column 3. I give the edge to Reconstruction. I know some content creators are hyping up Discord. Yes, there is certainly a playstyle there. Yes, you can certainly, quote unquote, never run out of ammo with Discord if you know how to use it and play into that build style. But I tend to go with strong perks that don't make me think and do all the work for me. And that is pretty much Reconstruction from just a different point of view. Column 4. You've got pretty much every sniper rifle damage perk you would ever want. Recombination is going to be really great here for making a mini Izanagi. Get a bunch of elemental kills to stack up 10 times the recombination damage stacks. Each stack additively increases the damage of the next shot by 10%. So once you get up to 10 stacks, you have a very, very high damage bullet. You do want to make sure that you land that, right? It's the Izanagi / Golden Gun dilemma of you can do a lot of damage, but if you miss, you've just kind of wasted a lot of work and progress. But it's a high damage bullet, and that can be really, really great for leaning into what sniper rifles excel at, which is long range burst damage. You've also got Vorpal Weapon. You've also got Firing Line for that kind of raid setup there. I don't think aggressive frame sniper rifles are even the edge for like a raid damage option here, even though this does get Reconstruction and you could do a Reconstruction firing line. I think the edge still goes out to rapid fires, but I would need to double check that to see if that is still the correct math or not. You've also got Focus Fury, although I think that's a distant fourth compared to Recombination, Vorpal Weapon, and Firing Line. Again, Recombination, I will happily work towards that if I have Reconstruction, taking care of my ammo stuff. I'll have this stowed. Reconstruction will reload the bullets. I whip this thing out with Recombination. I've got I've got some elemental kills, so I've got a few stacks. Maybe I've got 10, maybe I've only got 5, but it's still a very high damage shot either way. I take care of a high health target. I go back to slaying out with my other weapons. You could also do Vorpal Weapon where you don't even need to worry about, you've just got that damage, that 50% damage buff working for you with every shot. And then with Reconstruction, you have a higher mag and overflowed mag that's also steadily reloading in the background. That's certainly fine there. Again, you can go and get an already wonderful version of this roll. specifically the Reconstruction Recombination or the Reconstruction Vorpal Weapon version, already exists on the DSC weapon. So for me, this is not a mandatory weapon to go and get at all. I don't know if you guys feel differently about this, but if there was a way that I could block out successions from dropping entirely as I run Onslaught, I would 100% do it, because I have the option to go get, and I already do have it, the crafted version of Succession. Granted, not all of you are in that spot, so I would understand that it might be easier for you to get Succession from Onslaught than DSC, but for those of you that do have access to DSC, I'm personally going to just point you towards that version, because I'm not seeing much of a use personally with Discord and Redirection being the new additions to this version. But Saint, do you have any different thoughts on that? Do you feel like there's an argument to be made for this version of Succession?
No.
All right.
There is okay, so there is the kind of funny gun go burr when you use Discord and then you use Redirection on top of that. You swap over to Discord, you shoot like 4 or 5 ads in a row, and then you get some bullets to deal extra damage towards some larger targets. And I can see that there's a place for that, maybe in some sort of double special, loadout that you're running, kind of like from a range or something like that. But that's like pretty niche IMO. And usually, if I'm going to be using my special weapon to clear ads, probably using a GL, some sort of GL or a fusion rifle or, whatever the case may be. I'm not really looking to use a sniper rifle to clear ads, but unless it's like a really long range situation, like some sort of GM where I'm really trying to keep my distance, I don't know. There's something there. I'm not super keen on it. Recombination, it's the GOAT. It's so incredibly strong when you're willing to use it, when you use it the right way and you're able to hit your shots. Yeah, it's nuts. Lead from Gold, I see a strong argument there. Reconstruction just feels good to use. Like you were saying, Impetus, of you get a few grenade kills and a few special weapon, energy weapon kills. You go back to Recombination. You've got 6 or 7 stacks. Reconstruction is always going to have it loaded for you. I just like Lead from Gold for the ammo efficiency and stuff like that, but really that's going to shine a lot in environments where you're guaranteeing yourself ammo spawns via some sort of armor exotic or something like that. Court?
Yeah, I don't have much else to add here. I think I certainly don't want to be too negative, because if you don't already have a Deepstone Crypt version, then yeah, try and get a good roll. Try and get your kind of Reconstruction Focus Fury, which is what I currently have on my crafted version. Again, you can enhance these, but then the Deepstone Crypt version, which is still available, you can go and get right now, is you can also craft and then also enhance them. I think Bray Inheritance is just a much more valuable perk, especially on Succession, because it gives you 1.5% ability energy, which is grenade, melee, and class, so it's all 3. It's not split up. You're getting 1.5% to all 3. Then you've got the whole reductions when it comes to the various multipliers when it comes to your grenades and all that jazz. I won't go down that particular rabbit hole, but I think that's just a little bit more valuable for an origin trait, and it's just hits. Mm-hmm. You don't need to you don't need to perform final blows. You don't need to do some jank stuff. It's just ability hits. Weapon hits with this weapon, and when you've got a 3 mag, you're already above what you would get from the Indomitability origin trait. So yeah, I don't have much else to add here, other than if you don't have one, try and get a few rolls of this. You've got that meme Discord redirection roll, but it's so niche that I would just probably never consider it in any place. GMs is maybe the place to bring it, but I would probably like, are you kidding me? Why are you bringing that in instead of just a regular sniper rifle, which they do perform really well in GMs, but just a niche role. If you're doing a really basic Grandmaster, you're just having liquor with the lads kind of vibe. If you're just vibing out, then yeah, that's the time to bring it in. But when is that really a serious consideration? So, yeah, nothing else to add here.
It's I mean, this is meant for people that either are getting back into the game or don't raid and get a taste for the raid weapons. And the same thing for forbearance. I'll have a little different thoughts for forbearance when we get to that in an episode or two. But if you raid, the appeal is just not there for you, and I'm okay with that. I get that I'm not always the target market.
All right, Saints, over to you for perhaps one of the 0 to hero moments of all time.
Yeah, talk about a weapon that I am in the target market for, and that is the Edge Transit.
No cap?
Bless its name. It is not Jover for this thing. We have a Void Adaptive Heavy Grenade Launcher, 120 RPM. If you didn't play Forsaken, the moral of the story is that like every other world drop weapon that you got was an Edge Transit, and I no joke. I remember going to my postmaster at once, deleting like 6 of them out of the postmaster at a time. So if you don't understand what's going on there, it was not good at all. And you got so many of them all the time when you were playing the game. It's finally back. It's been a long time since Forsaken, so let's see how the stats have held up here. We're going to compare it to Cataphract and Wendigo from Trials and Nightfalls, respectively. The element is just, we're not super concerned here about Void versus Strand versus Arc. It's really just like lining up your mods and the searches and stuff like that. They all have 50 blast radius, and Edge Transit's kind of hanging out in the middle here. I guess generally middle. Edge Transit's velocity is 32. You got Cataphract up at 40, and Wendigo back down at 29. Stability is 42. 44 on Cataphract, and then Wendigo for 38. Reload is 39, which is actually the lowest compared to 47 on Cataphract, and then handling is kind of in the middle again at 42 with 47 on Cataphract. And just like the sniper rifle, we do want to touch on reserves here a little bit. Kind of strange that the way that it plays out when you add reserve mods, but basically it's got a base of 24 versus 25 on Cataphract. Wendigo is also 24. As you add reserve mods, it ratchets up a little bit and go up to 28, but Cataphract maintains that just slightly edge on the inventory size and can go up to 29 versus only 28 on the other two. I don't know. A bit strange. Having one extra shot isn't huge there, but if you want that extra slight bit of total damage, technically Cataphract can weigh out by one grenade. Not a big deal, though. Let's talk about what we got and what we lost since the original appearance. We lost thermoplastic grenades in the second column, like mag options. In column 3, it lost rangefinder, snapshot sights, and threat detector. Wow, rangefinder. How about that? In the third column, we gained Cascade Point, Chain Reaction, Envious Assassin, Impulse Amplifier, and Repulsor Brace. In the fourth column, we lost Ambitious Assassin, Genesis, Quick Draw, and Rampage, and gained Adrenaline Junkie, Bait and Switch, Deconstruct, Destabilizing Rounds, Explosive Right, Frenzy, and Full Court. So, wow, did this thing get the absolute treatment, going from rolling with snapshot sights and quick draw to some of the best damage dealing burst DPS traits in the game. Now, there are a lot of things that have been talked about on this weapon as far as its optimal damage output, the obscene amount of damage you can do with bait and switch on this weapon, and having its mag pumped up with Envious Assassin. But what I'm really here to talk about is the kind of goofy role of Chain Reaction plus Deconstruct. Now, what's going on here is that the Chain Reaction hits can count as hits for Deconstruct, and you can get ammo back like really easily when shooting this thing into a crowd of ads and having them explode. Furthermore, if you put on high explosive ordnance in the third column, it's going to take your mag from 6 to 4, which sounds completely unintuitive. But let me tell you, the way that deconstruct counts is basically either 3 hits if you have a mag size of 1, or 2 plus 50% of the base mag rounded down. So 2 plus 50% of 4 rounded down. You can see how this is like taking your hits needed to get free ammo back. I want to say Sebro was the first person to tweet about this. Maybe it was Revenant. I don't know. And then I kind of got what they were talking about, and then I saw a clip of this in action, and it's just dumb. You are blowing up massive groups of enemies, and ammo just keeps appearing back in the magazine, and that's pretty fun. Yeah, I don't know. That's just a goofy roll. Court, what is the true role here? What is the DPS dealer?
Well, just to add on your point, so I was watching Dan Finity and Revenant streaming earlier on today during the weekends, and Revenant actually did have the deconstruct role, because I won't go into the rabbit hole of deconstruct because there's so many like rabbit holes that split into their own rabbit holes. But basically, to wrap all of that up, is they were using it on Onslaught, and they had the giant streaker, which counts as a construct, and because you get like additional progression towards the mag benefit, obviously you get the damage buff with deconstruct, but also the magazine benefit, and he just kept firing. I was like, oh my, this is quite something. I can't remember what he had in column 3. It may have been Cascade Point, but yeah. So the DPS role. Now, I've seen a lot of commentary. Even Bungie have came out to state that I think it is the Envious Assassin. So if you've got a double perk roll, I think it's Envious plus Cascade in column 3. You can swap to Envious Assassin, get that ramped up to the maximum, then swap to Cascade Point. And they've explicitly identified that that's a thing that's probably going to get changed in the future. So they've been very transparent. It's maybe not been as public as I would certainly want it. It's not been tweeted out. It's not really been kind of shared a lot, but it was on Reddit where they said, look, you might be chasing after this role, but this role of Envious Assassin and Cascade Point probably will be fixed, or say, quote, fixed, but changed in the future, where they haven't explicitly said how they're going to do it, what's going to happen. I think they're probably just going to tweak with how Cascade Point works, or there's going to be some sort of cooldown between swapping. Obviously, this wouldn't apply in a Grandmaster, wouldn't apply to anywhere where that locks your loadout, because you cannot change your perk selection when it's locked out. So I wanted to point that out. But yeah, in terms of the actual DPS role, you've got a lot of options. Now, there's been a lot of... I'm not the grenade launcher guy. I certainly don't pretend to have that knowledge when it comes to like how everything works together. We'll talk a little bit more how impact versus explosive or blast radius when we talk about Mountaintop in a future episode. That's a little bit more important, especially when it comes to impact. But for here, I think your sort of go-to would be something like quick launch for that velocity. You've got the handling, so just to swap in and out. And then it's really a toss-up here. So spike grenades still isn't, it's not completely out of the picture here, but it really depends on what perk selection you have. So you wouldn't want to necessarily pair with spike grenades plus explosive light, because there's a lot of contention between those two perks. You do want to have something like spike grenades and bait and switch or frenzy. If you can't get spike grenades, your next best option would be something like alloy casing for your increased magazine size. Augmented drum for your increased magazine size. And then in column 3, so a lot of options here. Very strong options. You've got Cascade Point, as I mentioned, on its own, probably going to be still very good. But if you pair it with Envious Assassin, if you can get that double drop roll. But you do have options like Field Prep. Field Prep's just another workhorse type of weapon perk. You get increased ammo reserves, which we haven't mentioned earlier on. Saint didn't have the stats, the numbers there, but it will increase it a sizable chunk with field prep. Plus, when you're crouching, you get that your reload speed bonus. Plus, when you can enhance this, that's an even higher ammo reserve increase. You do have your classic auto-loading holster roll when it comes to dumping a bunch of grenades, swapping to, say, a sniper rifle. Succession, for example, is a kind of option, or as an Agnes Burden, something else that's kind of exotic, Cloud Strike, and then swap back to it and it'll be already preloaded. And then you've got Envious Assassin. So you've got a lot of options here. And you mentioned there as well, Saint, about like a kind of meme-based chain reaction deconstruct. You can go for that as well. But yeah, over on the damage perk side, you've got Frenzy, you've got Bait and Switch, you've got Explosive Light. I do not value full court. Court is indeed not full.
Dude.
It's just not. I just don't quite. I see it recommended quite a few times, and I'm just like, up against Explosive Light, Bait and Switch, Frenzy. It's not quite there as a damage perk, and it just keeps reminding me how, not recently, but maybe a year or so ago, we found out it's based on how long the projectile's been in the air, not the distance of the projectile, the range of the projectile. So it's just one of those perks it's there, it's taking up a slot. I'd rather just get something like Bait and Switch or Explosive Lights and Frenzy. So it's definitely up there in terms of damage. Heavy grenade launchers are doing quite well. I think I may have undersold it way back when we were discussing the heavy GL changes. But they are getting up there. If you can get a really great kind of roll, spike grenades, field prep, or cascades, or all-loading holster, and then something like Bait and Switch, yeah, it's only 30% instead of 35 before. But Frenzy is there as well as a really great kind of damage perk as well. Impetus, you got any thoughts here with our meme lord Edge Transit?
No, I don't have any meme rules. The two that I've kept are Envious Bait and Switch, and then Cascade Point and Frenzy. Yeah, I mean, they're just regular versions. I have spike grenades on, I think it's my Bait and Switch one. Yeah, I have spike grenades, Envious Bait and Switch, and then what's the other one? Augmented Drum is on my Cascade Frenzy. So they're fine. You know, if I get any other rolls, sweet, but I'm not focusing for this anymore. I'm perfectly fine with those two rolls. Yeah, I don't imagine I'll be attuning to this weapon anymore. So, but excited to finally use the gun I've heard so much about. I was not around for when Edge Transit was dropping with that sweet Snapshot Genesis God roll that I'm sure all the PvE players were losing their minds over back in Forsaken era.
You mean Rangefinder Genesis?
Yeah. And doesn't Rangefinder like increase your grenade velocity or?
I thought it was like the impulse amplifier of the day before we had impulse amplifier.
Well, impulse amplifier was just that, but better.
Yeah. But good to see this back. I think we're all kind of anticipating how it's definitely up there in terms of damage perks, but it's not like a rocket launcher where it's quite simple to understand how a rocket launcher works. You want something like an aggressive or adaptive rocket launcher, and then just a damage perk with, say, field prep or envious or reconstruction, and that's it. You don't really need to think about anything else. But when it comes to heavy grenade launchers, you do need to kind of take that consideration of how does spike grenades, how does that perform? Do I need something like Masterwork Blast Radius? Should I fully Masterwork that? You shouldn't, based on the type of perks you have. There's just a lot of like these little rabbit holes, which just gets it kind of, Bungie's been quite good at kind of consolidating a lot of information down, just kind of condensing things. But now we've got back to the point where heavy GLs are doing really well. But now we've got all these little kind of, okay, I need this perk, but how does it perform with the multiple computations of all these perks, and should I masterwork? It's just a lot of like confusing kind of misinformation kind of going out there. But We'll obviously talk about the grenade launcher aspect again when we come to Mountaintop, which is a little bit more important, especially with how Mountaintop performs impact versus blast radius. But here you should just kind of focus on your classic when it comes to DPS. All right, final one of these 6 weapons. The first half is Falling Guillotine, another weapon which. Well, it was definitely the best sword back in the day. It wasn't the edge transit of the swords back during, Prophecy days, spin to win. So yeah, this is our Void Vortex sword, and as a reminder, that's your heavy spin attack, which consumes 6 ammo. So we're going to pair this with the Slammer. So Impetus and we talked about this last week on episode 101. That is our Stasis Nightfall weapon, and then Thin Precipice, which is our strand from season 21, which you can craft and enhance. So Fallen Guillotine versus the Slammer versus Thin Precipice. Charge rate, all the same at 20. Impact, all the same at 60. And the total ammo capacity at base. So blade perks and ammo mods may variably or increase this number. So at base at 60 versus 60 versus 56. And then with the reserve mods, you've got 64, which is the same for the Slammer, versus 60. 2 reserves, 66, which is the same for Slammer, versus 62. And then at 3, you've got 67, which is the same with Slammer, and that's versus 63 for Thin Precipice. Just a real kind of note here. So swords do have a few blades that kind of change how your total ammo capacity is filtered through. I am aware, at least for heavy grenade launchers and other weapons like Succession, they've got pretty much a 99 or at least 95% kind of accuracy rate when it comes to magazines stuff. That's all being kind of dictated by Mossy Maxie's spreadsheet when it comes to ammo reserves. What isn't supported here, though, is the sword stuff. I know that's not currently supported on D2 Foundry. So when you click through the various amount of blades, it might not be representative of how it displays in-game. But you can check it on Moss's spreadsheet. I know he's got that up, and you can find that over on the D2 spreadsheet's link tree, which is all pretty much accurate. So yeah, very much the same as what we said last week. With the Slammer, it's pretty much kind of the same across the board. Just Thin Precipice has a slight decrease compared to these two. So let's look at the differences since its OG version, which is way back in Season 11 of Rivals. So in Column 3, they've removed Energy Transfer and Tireless Blades, and they've added Attrition Orbs, Chain Reaction, Duelist Trance, Frenzy, Repulsor Brace, and Vorpal Weapon. You might be mistaken that I'm talking about Column 4 there. Nope, that is all in Column 3, including Vorpal, including Frenzy. Very unique to see those damage perks in there. In Column 4, they have removed Counterattack and On Guards, and they've added in their place Bait and Switch, Desperate Measures, Destabilizing Rounds, Eager Edge, and Sword Logic. Very interesting. All right, let's kick things off. Blades. So again, probably just going to be another classic case of, do you want more impact? Then you'd probably just want to go for something like Jagged Edge. But if you want more ammo capacity, then you want to go for Hungry Edge. And again, much like what we said last week, Swordmaster's Guard is your kind of go-to in PvE. Still to play around with how the different guards perform when it comes to guard resistance, but I think for a Vortex frame, I don't think that's really necessary. You want to maybe use that on Adaptive or another type of frame, but not a strong loss if you can't get Swordmaster's Guard. But again, there's not a lot of options anyway in columns 1 and 2. But the real interesting aspects are definitely in columns 3 and 4. Now, swords, they have their place. They're not the meta. They have been meta before, but depending on the type of enemy you're up against, I'm a lot more friendly when it comes to sword damage, especially when it comes to like Crota. I always kind of recommend swords. Yeah, sure, Crota has that buff that swords have against him, but I'm just thinking like your first boss, the Kell, not the kill, sorry, the Phalanx Echo at the start of Prophecy. That's another kind of good option just to bring this in for sword damage, but it can be useful in specific places. But yeah, columns 3. Now you've got your classic Relentless Strikes. That's your gain 1 ammo after scoring 3 powered hits. That's just your kind of regeneration type perk. But because we've got like damage perks in here, you have Vorpal, which I wouldn't really recommend because it's only 10%. But Frenzy's in here. Frenzy's a very for a sword. This is a strange pick. It's like this is dropped out of another perk and it's found its way on this sword for some reason. But you won't get the handling bonus here. So we always talk about Frenzy. It's got that plus 100 to reload and handling. Swords don't have a reload stat whatsoever. You might be thinking, does handling work on swords? And we've kind of asked around, and it appears not. It does not give you like an increase to swap in and swap out, and there's no increase to like bringing up your sword to guard either. So you're not getting those benefits, but you are getting that 15% damage buff. Now, if you pair that with Surrounded, again, another perk that you can enhance in the future, which will be up to, again, it's another like 40% increase for swords. That's a 15 times roughly 40, which multiply together damage perks on one weapon. If it's in column 3 and 4, they do stack multiplicatively, and it goes up to about 60 to 65%. I don't have the exact number for enhanced Surrounded on a sword at the moment, but that's around about 60% damage increase just for being in action and having ads around you. So this might not be necessarily a DPS unless you can get a lot of ads to kind of be around the boss while you're attacking. It's maybe not so easy in a lot of scenarios. You can do it with Crota if you could set it up. But this is more of a kind of, perhaps, maybe not necessarily a Grandmaster type of weapon, but just your kind of standard like onslaught maybe is a good place to bring this in if you can really bulk up in terms of reserve mods. I'm thinking you, Saint, for like bringing in what's the arms that the name escaped me.
Stronghold.
Strongholds, yes.
Oh yeah,
that's maybe your go-to for just like raw damage output, and also you get restoration times
just
2.
way too much survivability going on.
Yeah, so that's the go-to. Bait and switches here as well, fairly easy to proc, but it's a lesser damage compared to enhanced Surrounded. Sword logic is fun to see, and the damage increase is dependent on the type of enemy you kill, so it might be a little bit kind of janky to get it to work. As a reminder, you get 15 for rank and file enemies, you get 25 for elites. Mini-bosses are 35, and bosses are 50%, but it's just you have to get that final blow with the sword to get that to proc. 50% is a lot of damage, but it's a bit of a niche case in a lot of scenarios. And then you've got Desperate Measures, which again, fairly easy to get up to that 30% on 3 stacks and just keep that maintained. And if you're doing it right, if you're doing kind of a pseudo ad clear / using this for champions or kind of mini bosses or even bosses, you'll also dip into the Indomitability perk, origin perk for this as well, getting your grenades and melee. So there's a lot of use cases here. You can do kind of a jack of all trades. And very interesting to see damage perks in column 3. And you pair that with another damage perk in column 4. Saint, what are you kind of looking here? Unless I've already mentioned it, especially with strongholds.
Yeah, just as a quick recap, I looked it up real quick, and it is 47% damage increase for enhanced surrounded normally. Swords are 41.75, and then rockets equate to about the same. So we were close earlier, but
that's a 48% damage increase.
Sign me up.
That's it's kind of dumb, how strong that is. I hear a lot of people say that, Vortex frames.
Oh, sorry.
That good.
I'm sorry. It's 63%. I calculated that wrong. I'm looking at a different value here. 63%. Sorry,
For
I'm saying.
Frenzy Surrounded?
Yes, yeah. Enhanced surrounded.
Yeah. That's a lot.
6-3.
That's pretty tough.
Pretty tough.
Say is pretty tough for anything that's on the receiving end of that.
Crota,
damage.
yes.
The thing that I hear a lot is that, the frame of the sword itself, Vortex frames aren't good. Now, what's not good about Vortex frames is the Vortex swing attack ammo economy is not very good. But the actual damage output of just using light attacks is... it's not that bad. It's the same pretty much as an adaptive sword. And then your caster frames, I believe, are like slightly underneath that. So I think that people see the Vortex frame and think, oh, well, that's not very good anymore. The ammo economy is not very good. Those light attacks do the same exact thing as they would on, your adaptive frame sword. And this is a obscenely strong perk set, right? To have on, any sword. And when we start looking at, what did you say, Cord? That was 63?
Yeah, 63%.
Yeah, so when you take that damage value and go up by 63%, I want to say that I don't think that you would be that far off from like a surrounded request. Surrounded request is probably still a little bit stronger because you can work in some heavy attacks there, and I think that would pump it up a little bit. But again, if you're not raiding and you want a sword for sword encounters and you don't have a lament, which I believe would still trump this out by maybe 15% or something like that. But yeah, double checking on damage generator here, it's pretty solid, and it could definitely hang with a something like a bequest. If you don't own the content, you never got lament. This is definitely a very viable option.
The only thing that I see is, this frenzy plus surrounded roll or another damage perk being switched, sword logic or desperate measures.
Mm-hmm.
It's good on paper, but in practice, because bequest is already quite high anyway, and it can get enhanced surrounded. I mean, the impact stat is high, but you can then, instead of having a damage perk in column 3, you have Relentless Strikes. Again, this is another weapon you can just go and craft once you have the 5 red boxes. So in longer damage phases, I know we're looking at not necessarily a meta that is currently active in the game, when it comes to swords, but Relentless Strikes is just such a powerful perk when you're just attacking one single target or just a bunch of ads. You're going to get that ammo back, whereas with Fallen Guillotine, with this kind of double damage perk stack, you don't have Relentless Strikes. You could, if you can get your shiny one to drop with Frenzy or Relentless Strikes plus Surrounded or something else like Whirlwind Blade or Eager Edge even. But then you have to kind of cycle around with trying to swap between each perk, which is maybe not the best time to do when you're slapping Crota or the Phalanx Echo with your sword. But just take that into consideration when you're like... I am kind of hyping this up when it's Frenzy plus Surrounded, Enhanced Surrounded, but Bequest is still out there.
Yeah.
But as we've said in this episode, not everyone can raid, not everyone can get access to those type of weapons immediately. So getting that on Fallen Guillotine is definitely a go-to if you can get it. Attuned for the Fallen Guillotine. I've attuned and I haven't had many to drop, which is a shame.
I still haven't even done the quest, so that shows you how little
come
I'm
on
interested in. I will do it eventually because I have to get the super black shader, but yeah, I have bequests. Like this is not necessary, unfortunately. I think if there was a world where you could use swords for burst damage, Frenzy Surrounded would be crazy awesome on this, but that doesn't exist, and I'm not quite sure. Even though I have the vault space, I don't even think I would throw a Frenzy Surrounded Falling Guillotine in my vault for that off chance that we get a sword burst meta at some point. Like, that one does not seem very feasible to me. So Yeah, it's got a crazy perk pool, but unfortunately, I've got something that will do just fine as far as swords go.
Yeah, similar to the secession discussion of if you've been doing a lot of Deep Stone Crypt, you're probably doing just fine.
Raid guns are good. A lot of people
Yeah, it
don't know
turns
this,
out.
but raid guns are pretty good.
I think that the last thing I want to mention on this is I like using something, again, going back to like rules that you can just have fun with, chain reaction and sword logic. First of all, sword logic on a sword, it makes sense. It just seems right. And then throw that in with something like chain reaction to just get a lot of explosions, which is really fun. I've used like a chain reaction demo roll on Hero of Ages, the sword from Grasp of Avarice, quite a bit, just because I enjoy the weapon. Maybe something like Relentless Strikes would give you a bit of a better ammo economy there, but still, yeah, definitely going to save a sword logic sword, just because it just makes sense.
You also have that very close range option, and we've mentioned the mid range. You've got the close range, and there you've got the really point blank range with repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds. If you want to go down that route, for my Gerfalcon hunters, just have repulsor brace plus something else. You can play around with volatile rounds through the Gerfalcons, even though it doesn't make sense to have it on a sword, but it's volatility that's going to be applied to your sword, and you can pierce through barrier champions with that as well, and just have a good time with that. But yeah, for my non-Gerfalcons hunters, repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds, if you can get that to roll, great. That's just your kind of ad clearing option, just to kind of clear out a bunch of ads. And yeah, chain reaction, I've maybe hyped in the past with certain swords. It's maybe not the best. I think it was Bequest, actually. It's not necessarily a great option because chain reaction is based on the combatant damage scaling, which for swords is actually quite low anyway.
That's a good setup.
Yeah, it might be a better option. I think I recommended this last week anyway for the Slammer, where it was chain reaction plus cold steel, which does synergize the chain reaction spread. The explosions will spread that cold steel slowness. So that's a better option. So if you've got that for the Slammer, keep that and then just focus on getting a frenzy surrounded. And ideally, you may want to have something like Relentless Strikes as a second option, and Eager Edge if you're into kind of flying around with your sword.
Yeah, the Eager Edge is fun as always, especially when you compare it with a trait that's like okay for dealing damage. And hey, chain reaction is getting a buff to heavies, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah.
Really,
proportionally speaking, it's still going to be pretty bad on swords.
Yeah, it's still not going to be great.
Yeah, but for other things like heavy grenade launchers, wave frame, heavy grenade launchers, it's going to be a lot better. But yeah, that's a good shout, actually, saying, yep. All right, lads. Any other highlights? Anything we've maybe missed out so far of the first half of the Brave Arsenal?
I don't know. I feel like people aren't as into Funnel Web as I would think that they would be, considering its trait set. Is that just SMGs these days?
Funnel Web or the Recluse?
Recluse. Wow. Yeah, I guess that really shows where my mind's at. Anyways, the Recluse, I feel like, is not as popular as I would anticipate it being based on its trait set. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think folks are maybe just a little bit bummed out because of the perk.
Master
the
of
original
Arms.
perk. Yeah, and I'm a little bit as well, but I'm a lot more friendly. Like, I've used Funnel Web a lot, but I also used Recluse a lot, so I'm probably going to use Recluse again a lot as we enter Final Shape. But you know what else is in that slot, Saint? There's two weapons that are in that slot. That is Indebted Kindness and Buried Bloodline.
Yeah,
and Buried
that is an
Bloodline
issue, huh?
on your Falcons. I don't need no Recluse. That's why I've not really been that fond. Well, I'm fond.
You don't
with
even
Recluse,
need Elsie's rifle, man. You got
Yeah.
your range band is covered right there.
I don't need
That
edge
thing
transit either.
Well, all right, hold on.
Yeah, it turns out that when we saw that first gameplay live stream, that there's a reason that Noah was using that Berry Bloodline.
Noah's cooking.
Yeah, he knew what was going on there.
No, I tend to get a bit tired of using the same weapon or setup all the time. I haven't actually used a lot of Falcons recently. I've been on Orpheus rig duty for Onslaught, but yeah, I mean, it's up against some really stiff competition, and we're getting an additional rocket-assisted sidearm in that slot, and then a solar one, and then we've got a strand one as well in our top slot. So once the strand one comes out, I might pivot back to Recluse, depending on the mod setup for next for echoes or / the final shape, what kind of stuff we're going to be using a lot. But yeah, it's not. I've not used it a fair amount, but I probably will when we get into the final shape.
Yeah.
Imagine if Palindrome comes back with the Witch Queen. Then we really won't care.
I'll keep dreaming. Yeah, other than that, really looking forward to Onslaught, which I'm sure we'll be talking about more in the weeks to come. But
the next set of weapons, I think we'll probably have a lot more to share about.
Oh, yes.
There's some really juicers in there.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of them.
Got to get back to running more Onslaught, frankly.
Absolutely. I think we should wrap up this show and do some Onslaught shortly.
Jeez, all right.
All right, well, that is all we've got for episode 102. Thanks for listening to another episode of PvE. We also want to thank our audio engineer, Autodidactos, as always, for helping us sound our best. My name is Sinkabir. You can find me by that name on social media, Massive Breakdown's Discord server, or hanging out in the game, looking for a better mountaintop. Impetus, where can our listeners find you?
My name is Impetus. You can find me right next to St. Kabir, also farming out my God Roll Mountaintop, hopefully before the shiny version goes away with the final shape. But you can also find me on Discord and Destiny as Impetus. Court, where can our listeners find you?
I will also be joining these fine nerds to get a lovely mountaintop shiny version to drop. But you can find me over my socials. That's Court Projects. You can also find my infographics and spreadsheets over on the D2 Spreadsheets link tree, amongst other great applications, spreadsheets, and fine documentation to enhance your Destiny experience. All right, thank you for listening to another episode of Podcast versus Enemies. We'll see you next week.